This is the 2024 film's logical explanation video. There are many ways to arrive at the solution of this puzzle without guessing. This is just one way. Starting with rule number 3, we know that the corners of the grid are occupied by prequel movies, with Wicked in the top right corner. We also know that there must be a musical in the opposite bottom left corner. This means Mufasa must go in the bottom left corner, and the other two prequels in the grid, A Quiet Place and Furiosa, belong in the other two corners. We do not know which of these films belong to which corner yet. From rule number 5, we know that the two highest grossing movies of the year belong in the bottom row. These are Deadpool and Wolverine, and Inside Out 2. These two movies must go in either of these two positions of the bottom row because the corners are occupied by prequels. From rule number 2, we know that the third movies released in their respective series must all be adjacent to each other. This means Deadpool, Sonic, Maxine, and A Quiet Place must all be next to one another. Since Deadpool must be in the bottom row, this means A Quiet Place must belong to the bottom right corner where it can be next to Deadpool. Maxine and Sonic must also be adjacent to both of these films. From rule number 1, we know that there are no horror films in the center 4 tiles of the grid, so Maxine and Sonic must switch. Also, according to rule number 2, we know that the second movies released in their respective series must all be adjacent to each other. This means Inside Out 2 must be adjacent to Gladiator 2 and Dune Part 2. There are only 2 positions next to Inside Out 2 available for these movies. But according to rule number 4, we know that Anya Taylor-Joy's movies must be in the same column, so we know that Furiosa and Dune Part 2 must both be in column 1. This leaves Gladiator 2 in this position above Inside Out 2. All tiles in rows 3 and 4 should now be correctly positioned. Also from rule number 4, we know that Lupita Nyong'o's movies must be in the same column. This means The Wild Robot must go in the last available position in the same column as A Quiet Place. All tiles in column 4 should now be correctly positioned. Rule number 6 requires the two A24 films to be adjacent to one another. These are Maxine and Civil War. Therefore, Civil War must go in the last remaining position adjacent to Maxine. Again from rule number 4, Zendaya's movies must be in the same column, and Kaylee Spainey's movies must be in the same column. So Challengers must go in the last remaining position in the same column as Dune, and Alien Romulus must go in the last remaining position in the same column as Civil War. Finally, from rule number 1, we know that there can be no horror films in the center 4 tiles of the grid. This means that Honora and The Substance must switch. If we check logic now, we'll see the logical is solved and without any guessing.